Hello, welcome to SquishiVision. Again, using my backup laptop because my normal setup isn't working, so excuse the massive glare, but you're gonna just have to deal with it because I'm doing this in the morning because I fell asleep last night after watching Thor: Love and Thunder. So, in fact, I'm gonna actually close these blinds. Let's make this a bit more of a manageable production. Other than this might actually make it a bit darker, or it might not help at all because then they're kind of translucent. Kind of help a bit. Anyway, this is my immediate well, not my immediate reaction because I fell asleep last night when I got home from this theater. Um, but my near enough immediate reactions could be spoilers. And again, this is kind of just my what I wrote down after seeing the film in kind of somewhat of a coherent order. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't hear screaming goats until the day I die. That might be a me thing, but this film is a fun and visually stunning one. There's some moments of genuine comedy, but also I think for most of the film it was a bit more mixed. I think less landed for me than it did. It's not a bad film by any means of measure. I mean, studios like Marvel and Pixar and all Disney make rarely come across as bad. Um, and I try as hard as I can, just in general, to judge films based on their own merit. But out of the other two Watiti films I've seen, which is Ragnarok and Jojo Rabbit, this one doesn't quite land its brand of casual kind of humor that Ragnarok had, the kind of whole not taking itself seriously, but not actively trying to be clever with its humor. And it kind of just works in that kind of sense. And also, um, it doesn't quite land the mix of comedy and drama or dramedy if you prefer that Jojo Rabbit does, which does really has a fantastic whiplash moment as it goes into the last act. That being said, there are a lot of what I would describe as every frame of painting moments in this film, as in you could pause the film and get a spectacular kind of visual frame. Like Watiti definitely, I think Watiti definitely enjoys using the comic book nature of these films to have these kind of comic book panel, visually interesting, nice kind of use of lighting effects moments. And so I'm looking forward to seeing frames that's appearing on the numerous Twitter accounts that I follow that dedicate to uh, uh, um, celebrating visual style. Um, and most of this film has a visual style. It's interesting and it involves through the story, so different set pieces, different locations have a different kind of visual sense, which I really enjoyed. The only part of that, which is the exception, um, well, I muted all this. The only part of that, which is the other part of this, which is the exception, is the Omniscient City, which felt more generic action film CGI set. It was very kind of. I'm not against CGI. It's quite the rest of the movie obviously was one that felt a bit more kind of like green screeny. Um, no, that wasn't the issue. Is it felt very much like it could be from any kind of film. It didn't feel interesting visually as much as the rest of the film did. But we start off with Alien Planet, which felt very kind of deliberately B movie, not in kind of the quality of the set, but in kind of the very much the fact that all the camera angles tend to be quite static. A lot of the sets were like big rock pieces that were just kind of like almost. You could tell that they were like set pieces. Um, like apart from the frame rate, it looks like a behind the scenes kind of thing in how kind of non-treated it was, but it worked. It worked for the kind of 80s aesthetic they were going for. Apart from Earth felt more grounded, like it was shot like a normal drama film with kind of depth of field usage to make the background a bit softer. Um, you know, use of quite you know the lighting usage was kind of reminiscent of what I would expect in a kind of more grounded drama, which worked for the new Asgard scenes because it juxtapositioned it, all the kind of magic and technology and fantasial stuff with the fact that they're living in a normal kind of city village and compared to how things were quite vibrant, lively in Asgard. And also it worked for the Jane Foster scenes when she was going through learning that she had cancer because it felt like, straight out drama. And then the black and white segments were like just amazing. Like they were simple, it's nothing unique. You know, films done it before, but it made it work. It made it work. They let bits of color bleeding through, and it kind of just like, I guess it's kind of the equivalent of having a dark scene of using little bits of light. You have a completely unsaturated scene, and you let a few bits of light come through. TT also had fun flirting in bits with the horror genre. Like, there's no actual what I would describe as jump scares. I'm quite jumpy. I don't like jump scares. That's why I avoid horror films a lot. That's why I'm putting off seeing Dominion, which is a bit sad because I kind of really want to go see that. But I'm having a pretty jumpy period of my life right now. So I don't do jump scares, but like there's no actual real jump scares in this. There's kind of like homages to it. Like for example, there's a part where Gore is distance when he disappears, when he appears close to the camera, when someone walks across the frame. And there's like a muted scare card, but like normally in an actual jump scare, it'd be a very large scare card, so it'd make you kind of flinch. This is very muted, so it wasn't trying to scare you, but it was still willing to like pay homages to that. There's a part where a kid gets yanked under the bed in a way which I think is very much Nightmare on Elm Street, although I've never actually seen it. Again, a jump scare, but it's not actually a jump scare moment, although certainly the film does build you up to that. And yeah, a lot of it with Gore is very kind of horror-esque, like, you know, the way that he can, the shadows, the way that it's shot, the way that he's has threatening presence. And, you know, speaking of horror, it was definitely interesting to see Bale play a more cartoonish villain, especially after, I think the only thing I've actually really seen him in, as far as I can remember, is his more grounded Batman. But he definitely does play Unhinged very, very well. So in terms of the humor, the whole being a joke thing until it becomes funny is something that is a thing, and it's something that which you can do well. You know, it's the whole like this thing isn't funny, but I'm gonna keep pretending it is, and eventually it does become funny. That's something actually can work, and it works in Ragnarok. I'm not sure it does it so well here. I think mostly this is me being put off by the whole X Hammer joke. So the joke is that Stormbreaker is jealous because Thor is trying to get validation from Mjolnir. And you know, maybe it's just not my kind of humor. Maybe it's the fact that Thor has already dual wielded Mjolnir and Stormbreaker in Endgame, and so we already know that Stormbreaker is fine. Right? Also, it makes more sense for Mjolnir to have personality because Mjolnir was kind of imbued with a sense of consciousness and will and decision-making ability. But Stormbreaker is just literally just a weapon, like a powerful one, but just a weapon. Like it was never imbued with that kind of thing, you know. That's a bit weird that they gave me Stormbreaker kind of a will and a personality and whatever. It's also a bit weird about being jealous. It's like, it's no kind of humor. Also, speaking of abusing powers, apparently Thor can just temporarily give his powers to other people, which, I mean, maybe it's just the person he's bothered to try, but also seems it kind of something he could have tried a bit earlier. I think maybe. Alright. Not sure how I feel about Jane's art. Jane's art. I can't really tell if she has one. It's very muddled, and I think some other reviews have agreed with me here. And she's more like a catalyst for the arc of the other two male leads for Thor and Gore. It's a very muddled journey. Both the previous films and this film in sort of flashbacks established that Jane, you know, if we're using Blake Snyder theory, a character has a list of things they need to fix. Otherwise, they will exist in a status quo equals death. So but Jane never really had that. Like in the first film, she was kind of like trying to get her science to work, and she did. And then in the second film, I think it's pretty much the same thing. But like what we see off screen in Age of Ultron, or what we hear rather, and what we hear gets called, and what this one establishes is that she's actually kind of got what she wants to be. And she and you know, as a scientist, and her thing that she needs to fix, I guess, is her cancer that comes along. But she's only really torn between her need to recover and her need to like ignore she has cancer and live her life and do her science because she doesn't want to spend her life recovering. Which is nothing new in cancer fiction. I'm sure that's pretty much every cancer fiction I'm sure that exists. And then she gets 4 powers from the hammer. Apparently, because Thor told the hammer to look after it like years ago, and that kind of he accidentally imbued it with that kind of sense of purpose, which is actually kind of nice, quite cute. Except the hammer doesn't actually help her. In fact, that's actually explicitly suggested that it's killing her faster. But Jay is fine with this because apparently it gives her an extra life, a purpose, but she already had a purpose. Like before the cancer came along, she had a purpose. She was doing something she enjoyed. Then the cancer came along and kind of ruined that. And then this hammer gave her another purpose, but one was just keeping her original purpose. It doesn't really work out if that makes sense. Like that wasn't one of her things she needed to fix. She wanted to go back to her science, and there's nothing to suggest that this is like a more noble purpose of it doesn't really meet with the message that's being set out. It's not really a clear, coherent theme that's being paid off. And then she spends the rest of the film not really struggling with anything she wasn't already, unless you catch catchphrase. She's already dying, and she still is dying. She and Thor reconnect, and that's more Thor's arc, which more in a couple of minutes. And then at the end, she has decided she's going to stay in bed where she might recover, but also unlikely to because she's got stage 4 terminal cancer. Or Fight 4, where it might kill her, but it might not. And then obviously she goes to choose to fight because it's her movie as well. So I guess her journey is: should I choose to recover what might be futilely, or should I try and live even if it kills me faster? But she already kind of was inclined to do that anyway, as we saw in the beginning. So she doesn't really change, and there's not really an arc here. And we never got a suggestion that there was actually anything for her to choose alternatively that would have cured her. Like I said, her cancer was terminal. I don't know if the Asgardian medicine was going to fix him. If that's the case, why isn't it available to everyone anyway? Like, is there some kind of Asgardian Prime Directive? In my mind, because Asgard's planet was destroyed and only people remained, they were very limited in technology they could have brought with them, and so they were limited in what they could have given back to humanity and what they can do. They have been doing, but they can't, bring everything with them. Or alternatively, a lot of technology, like a lot of the medicine, would be incompatible with humans to an extent, so it's not actually like useful for human healing. I thought that would be kind of the case. And I think Ant-Man and the Wasp did a better job of being a sequel to a film, or being a sequel to films that gave more of an equal prominence to its female, gave more, if not an equal prominence to its female lead. Although I guess it's unclear if that was the intent here because the film is called Thor, and I don't know if that's referring to Hemsworth's Thor or both of the Thors because they both have Thor as their name now. Yeah, so about Thor's arc, that's again also not that clear. His arc is that should he close himself off in order to not be hurt, or should he live at the risk of loss? A theme which should resonate with me at the moment because I'm going through a very similar thing right now, R.I.P. Harris. But Thor never really closes himself off. He hasn't really closed himself off in the previous films. I mean, I guess he does when he gets depressed and goes into isolation in New Asgard. But then he gets over that. Like he comes back to join the team, and he cares. And like, I mean, he never closes himself off in a way that Gore, as his antagonist, is meant to represent. Gore closes himself off to love so much that he only thinks about vengeance and killing. But Thor still cares enough to save people. He's passionately horrified by Gore's plan. Like he's not just like, oh, that's a bad thing. He's like actually aghast by it. As soon as he hears Sif is in danger, he immediately goes to go save her. He never comes across as cold or indifferent. He even said, in the same part where the theme is stated, that he thinks he's grown too attached to the Guardians, and everything we see of him and the Guardians show that he has that kind of bond with Star-Lord, and it's him who shows himself. It's not he draws out his goodbye with the Asgardians because I'm about to shot my cat. Lily! Lily! What are you eating? And don't eat it. Oi! Oi! Come here. Come on. What's this? Scratch teeth from the thing on the floor. Come on. There we go. Right. Anyway, sorry, what was that? Yeah, he's the one who draws out the goodbye with the Guardians, which implies that he's the one who's got the problems letting go and cutting himself off of people. But it doesn't really work there. At no point does he come across as needing to be fixed in the way the film says he does. It says that that's the problem he has, but then he goes, he goes back to Asgard, and he seems, I mean, doesn't seem different. He still seems his lovable kind of state. And then defeat Gore by because Thor's like Thor displays that he'd rather choose love than spending his last minute. Or I'm not entirely sure what else he could have really done, hate or whatever. And that inspires Gore to use his wish to bring back his daughter instead of killing all of the kind of deities that are people he considers to be deities. Which I guess kind of works, but again, Gore was never shown as like an alternative to Thor. I guess he could have been, but like not potently enough. And honestly, it would be better if it showed that Gore is anger and vengeance. Never really realized until now he could have switched for his daughter back, and then now he's like, oh well, I can do that. Yeah, of course I can do that. Obviously, I'm going to do that now. That kind of would have made a bit more sense to me. I don't know. Thor's arc doesn't really seem that coherent to me. They also brought back Jimmy Alexander to the film as Sif. And gave her a high billing in Waititi, despite the fact that she's like in 2 scenes that are probably less than 10 seconds each. And they treat her character with slightly more respect than Robert is Free, which this film acknowledges, and I guess responds to criticism that Thor never really mourned on screen the death of his 3 best friends by mocking how trivial their deaths were in this film. But yeah, it was looking worryingly like they were going to do the exact same thing with Sif and kill her off to show how bad the big bad was, and then they possibly decided not to do that for the backlash. But like she's barely in this film, and she's again only really there to show how bad the big bad is. But I guess at least she's back, after not being in a Thor film since 2013, but making some appearances, which are actually kind of better for her, I guess. In Agents of Shield, and then making a brief appearance in Loki. Honestly, the most interesting part of this film is the premise at the end of Thor becoming a dad. And I'm not saying that should be this entire film. This film needed to be this film, and I'm glad it was this film. Well, I'm okay with it being this film, but I want the next film to be Thor being a dad, or I guess maybe it's probably more likely to be a Disney Plus release. Also, I only realized as I was reading Wikipedia that Gore's daughter's name is actually Love. The final line of this film is, Korg narrating and describing the adventures of Thor and his adopted daughter, and saying, but you might have heard the stories where they're known as, I can't do a New Zealand accent, where they're known more commonly as Love and Thunder, and then obviously the title cards play. I'm like, I guess that kind of works, but I don't. It seems like a shoehorned way to get it. And then I was like, oh, her name is Love. That's why it's Love and Thunder. Why would it be Love and Thor? I guess it still doesn't make much. But yeah, they never really made it clear her name was, or at least I missed entirely that her name was Love. Maybe there was a line earlier where Gore's like, please save my daughter, Love. But Love is a really bad name because it's also Sobiquet and a team of endearment, and so you're kind of assume, like, every time he was like, I didn't hear him say my love a whole bunch of times, but like calling your daughter my love is a thing people do, like, mean the name. So I'm not going to assume that's her name. That was really bizarre. This film is to Ragnarok what The Dark World is to Thor. Both this film and The Dark World were decent entertaining movies with strong scenes, but otherwise okay-ish. That follows other Thor films, which are much stronger and one of the strongest MCs in the MCU kind of ranking. So I don't know. Does this prove that Marvel should only do trilogies for its solo-led films? I do love the Screaming Goats though. Alright, that's my reaction to this. I need to go get ready for Eid because it's Eid today, Eid Mubarak. So I'm gonna go do that. Well, what we do now is have breakfast and watch the rest of Marvel Assembled for Moon Knight, and then probably be on time for train. Maybe we'll see. Anyway, cheers for watching, and I'll see you then. I just said I'll see you, Ben. I don't know when the was. I'll see you next Wednesday or probably Thursday because I'm probably gonna fall asleep for the final episode of Ms. Marvel.